Hey YouTube, this is Mahadeva, the OG Thunder Wizard. And today I'm going to continue with the second part of my interview with the Wizard Factory. And they had contacted me a while back. They've already put this up on their channel, so I'm just giving you the second half of the raw footage. If you want to see it better edited, you can go onto their YouTube channel, The Wizard Factory. Their website is thewizardfactory.com, and of course mine is thethunderwizard.com. So before I launch into this, let me talk a little bit about the 90-day challenge. I've been getting some very good feedback from people who have been doing this. Those of you who are doing it, you may be running into some intensity in your life. So I promised you that doing this would bring changes, bring massive change. So what's happening if you're working through this and you're feeling a lot of intensity, it means that the unconscious garbage that is keeping you from experiencing your greatest success and happiness is starting to get riled up. So it's like if you've got, a glass full of water and there's a bunch of sediment at the bottom. When you stir it up, all that gunk comes to the surface. So it's actually making its way out. It's cleaning itself out. And so I recommend everybody stick with it. And if you want to find out more about it, you can go to thunderwizard.com and click around until you get to the Warrior 90-Day Challenge subscription options. So that is what helps keep me on the air, as it were. All right, so today we're going to be talking about my book, Odin Says Jesus Was a Coward. And I get some really great questions. In fact, I really enjoyed my interview with these guys. They asked me to come on to their podcast, and we talked about that book. And we talk a lot about, we're going to start again right into it, where we're talking about, how Jehovah, even though he's supposedly this being that loves you and created you, why he acts like this psychopathic, narcissistic, somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder. Sorry, actually, I have to bring that video into my little program here so that I can share it with you. So I've got to go onto my desktop and find it. It should only take a second here. And is that what I'm looking for? No, that's not what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for. No, that can't be it either. Oh, wait. That's because I pushed the wrong button. Never mind. Hang on. Forgive me. Give me a second here. It's not an image. It's a media source. So we're going to bring in that video off of my desktop, and then we'll be able to watch it together. So here it comes, and now we can get started. Okay, enjoy.
Only a person who feels inferior inside is going to try to position themselves as superior to others. Only someone who feels that like you're saying, that heart-based care, they're not trying to get one up on anyone. They just love everyone and want to be equals with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the idea that, that Odin, seems to very clearly say to me is that, I'm infinite, I'm quote God, but so are you. And if you want what I have, you can do what I did. On my channel, I say that. I say, if you want what I have, you got to do what I do.
Yep.
And so that's, and that I like that idea that you're talking about, how this is again something that people may not understand if they haven't looked at history, is that even in other religions that I like, even in other polytheist religions, it's now, by now, I mean, the past 2,000 years, we view spiritual, we look for people who have achieved enlightenment, and then, so there's these gurus out there that project themselves as being perfect and enlightened, and or, which might even be worse, they allow their followers to project them that way. And our ancestors didn't see that. And the way that we know that is through fairy tales. In fairy tales, the witch could be the wicked witch or the good witch. So just because somebody was spiritually and energetically evolved didn't mean that they were enlightened. It just meant they had power, which means that anybody could have power. And how you choose to be, you know, was really what it came down to. And so that idea of the perfect, enlightened, that you know, and I love the Buddhist saying, if you see Buddha on the side of the road, kill him. Because if you see him there and he's perfect and you try and compare yourself to him, then you're going to end up worshiping him and forget his whole message, which was you're supposed to balance yourself.
Right.
It's your job.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I remember the point I was gonna have. You were mentioning like within the Yoruba tribe how the king, you know, he's always broke because he's giving to his people. It very much brought up that kind of it's very much a Jupiterian type of energy. Like we look at Jupiter. Jupiter creates like wealth and abundance, and he expands things. You know, he takes care of. That's why we see Jupiter's the karka of like fatherhood. You know, what does a father do? He's supposed to teach his child. He's supposed to give them what they need, like create abundance for his family, help expand those things and teach that wisdom. So you see that within the polytheistic cultures, that the people in positions of leadership of power, it's not like it is here in like a monotheistic culture where it's a dominating kind of hierarchical power. They're in that position to actually serve, to try to like help, to give back, to have that gabo. Very, very different than what we see in the monotheistic culture. And then the next little point that I want to bring up too is that even if we're looking at the sacrifice of Jesus, we can see very much so like within the Bible even that he didn't want to do that. He was told to, and then even within there, like within the garden, you know, he's like weeping to the point like of praying that he's like sweating blood, which is a physical condition that I can't remember what it's called exactly, but it's something that can actually happen to the body when you're under such a state of duress and stress that you can actually, you know, sweat blood. So he was in that much resistance to wanting to do it that, you know, that's where that is not someone who is bravely going to sacrifice himself because they love everybody. Yeah, it's cowardly on both ends, you know.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that, again, if anybody's like me, I grew up thinking, you know, Jesus is a brand new narrative. There's nothing like Jesus has ever come before, and here he is selflessly giving himself. And then, yeah, you look at it, and yeah, like you said, it is a real thing. The capillaries in the, you know, the forehead burst, and the, you know, I mean, imagine the intense thinking that's going on. That all the, you know, imagine the headache you must have. That it's so intense that the capillaries burst and you sweat blood. You know, that's somebody who's in a tremendous amount of fear, and probably, you know, the conflict has got to be so intense, and the guilt and the, you know, I mean, this is not somebody.
I am God's son, but I gotta save everybody. So, like,
I mean, like,
and I am fully human at the same time, and I really don't want to be killed.
God, some reason gave me survival, like, you know, survival mechanisms in my brain.
And we're supposed to look up to that guy like he's some sort of example. He's just like the classic codependent, you know, dysfunctional, screwed up, you know, victim of childhood abuse.
Right.
Why do we want to be that guy?
Right. Yeah. I mean, even in the military, like in the Marine Corps, you know, you don't see Marines in combat even, you know, to the point that they're sweating blood or anything. And you think about how intense a combat situation is, like, especially within modern warfare. Like, so, I mean, this guy really didn't want to fucking do it. So not only was he cowardly on that end, but it's cowardly on the other side of it, of him being so narcissistic to actually buy into that shit, to believe that, oh, I'm so perfect that my sacrifice will suddenly save all these people, or the fact that the belief that those people even needed to be saved. It's a false assumption. Nobody fucking needed to be saved in the first place. We were just fine as we were.
And then you've got the whole thing that the thing doesn't even work because, you know, unless you intellectually assent to it, the sacrifice that and according to the New Testament, he suffered the wrath of Jehovah for every single person's sin, every single person's specific sin before, all that have come before, that exist and will ever exist. And that's been thrown onto one person. And even after that, it still doesn't work unless you decide to drink the Kool-Aid and become part of the club. And then,
Right.
imagine Jesus, like, holy crap, you're telling me that 98% of all that pain I went through was for nothing? They didn't even,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, the short end of the stick. No.
there's just nothing about it that is valuable. But my view of Jehovah is that, as you said, I love the word when you brought in projection, because everything is projection. And whether people like it or not, you're worshiping yourself. You worship Odin, you're worshiping yourself. You're worshiping whatever he represents. You're worshiping Shiva, you're worshiping yourself. Krishna, you're worshiping yourself. Buddha, you worship Jesus, you're worshiping your own codependent victim nature, and you're spiritualizing it. If you worship Jehovah, you're worshiping your narcissistic ego. So it's interesting, the people who are the most religious are also the most judgmental, the most violent, the most hypocritical. I remember growing up as a Christian and watching Jimmy Swaggart. You guys remember Jimmy Swaggart?
Yeah.
And he ended up having sex with the prostitute and he got caught with it. And then, he has the balls to sit there in front of the whole world and go, I have sinned against you. It's just, oh my God. Before that, what's interesting, because I remember before that, he would go up and he would rail against pornography and he would rail against lust. And that's because he's out there screwing prostitutes.
Yeah.
And he would take the Quran and he would say, like, the Quran is, and he would just tear and destroy any other religion. I'm not a fan of the Quran either, but it was just so hypocritical the way he would destroy everybody else's religion, and then turn around and it's okay because he confessed and he said, God, please forgive me, and he cried. And
Yeah.
there's just nothing left to say.
Yeah, Christianity very much has this kind of, like, what Logan and I we've referred to as like the magic pill like concept. That you
It's
can
just as easy as it is to be saved, it's easy to be forgiven.
Right.
You just say,
so
forgive me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you just do this and all of a sudden your problems are gone away. Or, so even within our society of, you have this depression, we'll take this pill and it's gone. It's this whole, like, it's the wanting the easy route out. And this is something that's coming up big for me, is the difference in the polytheistic societies and their understanding of Saturnian type of lessons, natural law, versus the monotheistic society and how they're very much separated from those Saturnian lessons. Where, like, Saturn, there's a reason Saturn, he's the bringer of our karmas. He's that pressure. He's cosmic law. He's natural law. And, like in relationship astrology, we see Saturn, he's not masculine or feminine. He's considered neutral, like Mercury, because he just is. He's just that objective truth of what is, but it's also that pressure. And with monotheistic societies where they really try to not only separate themselves from nature, but by doing so, separate themselves from that pressure that actually teaches us about cosmic law, natural law, and has these experiences of how we actually interact. It's that pressure of Saturn that forges us and makes us actually have to become something better. Whereas, like, they want that easy route out. They don't want to have to put that long, hard work of Saturn in there. They just want it given to them. They don't want to have to feel that pressure, feel that intensity, or deal with the consequences of their own choices. Oh, I've sinned. Well, now I just get to have my easy get out of jail free card, and I do this. I get dipped in some water, and I'm fucking good to go. It's that, like, that's not how karma works. I mean, you can try that with Saturn all you like, but you're gonna have a bad fucking time, like, because he's not gonna just let you up without getting a lesson. And that's, there's a strong disconnect between societies that are accepting and understand that there is this challenge, there is that pressure, but that's literally what helps us evolve. That's what helps us continue to grow. And without that, you become stagnant and weak and just a pathetic little sheep, like most modern Christians are. They will bend down and lick whatever boot they're told to.
We see that also reflected in Western medicine, where Western medicine is, I mean, it's getting better, but it's designed to cover up symptoms, which is the same idea. Here, just take this pain pill, or here, just take this antidepressant, or, he'll just take this. And all it does is it pushes the imbalance further into the tissues. It gives you a little break where you don't feel the effects immediately, but yeah, you end up dying later of a heart disease or some other really nasty thing as a result of continually suppressing the symptoms. And like you said, Christianity doesn't work because if getting forgiveness then motivates you to then take correct action, great. But if it's just, get out of jail free card, then that illusion that and again, what a great way to control people, because then you can give them conflicting advice. You can give them superficial things to do that go against their own nature, and they'll just take it because, again, like if you question the Bible, they'll say, oh, you can't judge God according to man's standards because, a God is so mysterious that we can't use, it even says you can't use your common sense to understand God. You're supposed to use it in your daily life with other people. Any other human being acts like Jehovah, we put them in the electric chair for being a psychopathic murderer. But God can do it, and we can't question him. It just, you end up back in the same scenario. And like you said, that sets up an environment where you don't question, you don't analyze, and you don't take responsibility.
Yep. Yeah, Christianity, it's a religion that like you have to be a layman to, or not question or not think to really still buy into it. It's just not,
or
when
pay
you start
even more for your
critical
indoctrination.
thinking. Yeah, it's just such a thing. And, another interesting thing to bring out is just the fact that, historically, like there's no actual proof Jesus was even a real character. But even if we want to go from like the assumption of Christians that like, yeah, he was and everything, as you read through the Bible, you can see so many different little contradictions. You'll say like, oh, well, he was, he was all about forgiveness and treating people with love and loving your neighbor and all these other things. But yet you can go through and point at example after example of like where that's just not actually the case. And that, you can't actually think the Bible is a good thing without having to go through and cherry pick, right? To look at certain things that you want to be and accept, but then totally ignore everything else, like where it says it's okay to beat your slave or to treat your wife terribly or whatever, all the other bullshit that we see in there. It really requires like people to have this they have to stay in a state of cognitive dissonance. Yep. To where they can accept, like they have these very contradictory beliefs like within their mind because they're reading this book and, oh, this is all true and God's all about love, but yet at the same time, oh, he wiped out this entire city, or if you do something that offends him, he's going to punish you and generations of children after you that didn't even do anything. He's going to punish them too. Like it's, you can't actually honestly look at the Bible and reconcile those things.
It's like there's contradiction between even Jehovah and Jesus. What they're saying, what Jesus is teaching, and what Jehovah is doing are even contradictory to one another.
Yeah. I like you bringing up the cognitive dissonance because when you understand anybody who is chronically in cognitive dissonance, they act out in really destructive ways in their environment. And so I think that's what's been happening with the world for the past 2,000 years. You've got, our society, whether they choose to be religious or not, they still live under this cognitive dissonance of being told one thing and doing something else. And I had an example I was going to say, but it fell out of my mind. But whatever it was really profound. So let's all take a moment to anyway, it'll come back to me. But yeah.
I actually have another point on the cognitive dissonance thing too, because what you said about responsibility, and for me personally, I think that's one of the biggest things that nailed the coffin, you know, so to speak, when it comes to Christianity, and me not even trying to give it the, you know, the benefit of the doubt as maybe it works for some people or whatever like that, is just because it's so antithetical to true sovereignty and personal responsibility. And, you know, take it back to the Adam story, where God is pretty much punishing all of humanity for the actions of one guy. It really comes down to this one thing for me. Like, you know, this one thing kind of seals the deal as far as the cognitive dissonance, where either, so the Bible also teaches that you can't get to heaven by works alone. Like, just going around doing the good deeds isn't enough. You have to, you know, in word, like, give your allegiance to God or whatever, give your heart, however they want to word it for you. You have to do that in addition. It's not about you. It's not about you taking right action, which is really what, you know, is the natural byproduct of true spiritual advancement, is you become a more moral person. You learn how to treat other people. And whereas we're the works alone don't count, but yet you have to do the action of converting, which that in itself is an act. But you can do as much good as you want and it doesn't count, but we're being punished for our bad, even if it's not even our own bad doings. We're being punished for some guy named Adam that I've never even met. So it's like, you can't have both ways. Either we are, you know, it's the teacher that's punishing the whole class because one kid snuck food in, or, you know, something like that. It's bullshit. We all know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's again a really great way to control people, where there's no, you know, clear path on what to do. You know, you can't win, and so no matter what you do, it's bad or good, and so that just keeps you in a constant state of just doing whatever the hell you're told. It's a great way of, you know, psychological torture.
Right. It's like, I'm so confused. I don't really know what the right thing is by exercising my own conscience. So I guess I'll just obey and do what everyone else is doing.
And so you just end up doing exactly what you're told without any thinking about it whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know, I remember what I was going to say, which was that, you know, when I was a Christian, and I remember, I mean, just all the time, including myself, you would hear Christians say things like, I just know that I know that I know that Jesus is Lord and that God is a good God. Don't we have a good God? We have a good God. And they talk like that. It sounds like somebody's perseverating, like they got a problem, but they all talk like that. And so I just assumed that's what a really religious person does until I left Christianity. I never once to this day have I ever heard a polytheist, especially a polytheist of a tradition that has an unbroken connection into prehistory, never have I heard them perseverate about how good their God is. Krishna, maybe a little bit, but that's almost, you know, they're so close to worshiping Jesus. But other than that, you know, somebody would say, yeah, Shiva's my guy. I really love Shiva. Somebody else says, oh yeah, I'm really into Rama. And you go, oh really? Oh, that's cool for you, man. That's great. Shiva doesn't work for me. Yeah, I understand. To each his own. Say that to a Christian. Oh no, Jesus is good. Jesus is he's the best. I know that Jesus is. Please believe it, because he's the best. That's obviously somebody who's in some severe cognitive dissonance, and somebody who has major serious doubts about their religion. You know, you go to. I can remember being in church, and there would be whole sermons on faith. Do you have the faith of a mustard seed? Jesus said, which of course Jesus had the faith of a mustard seed, because look, he turned the water into wine and fishes into loaves, and you know, and Jesus said, if you have just the tiniest amount of faith, like the size of a mustard seed, I mean the tiniest amount, anybody could do that. If you could do that, you could move mountains, which again, the unstated, you know, follow-up to that is, can you move a mountain? And I'd sit there and I go, I can't move a mountain. Wow, I don't even have the faith of a mustard seed. What a piece of crap am I? And I can remember at the end of the sermon, the guy, you know, after all that, he would say, do you really believe in Jesus? Do you really have faith? And of course the answer is no. Nobody could sit there and say, yes, I truly have faith like you just described. Nobody can do that. And then after that comes what? the altar call. Come on up. If you want to receive Jesus, then you have to, because you're such a piece of crap. You can't even do the tiniest little thing that Jesus said is the easiest thing to do. And so you better come up and just give yourself to Jesus, you worthless piece of crap. God loves you anyway. Oh my God, you're disgusting.
It's like a basic, like the sales pitch where, you want to like highlight the problem, like that they're not aware of. And then, so you don't have the faith of a mustard seed. So do you want to come up and accept Jesus now? Cause you really need him. But it's interesting that you brought up the whole, them trying to say like, oh yeah, I know how much, cause I grew up like right in the middle, like I'm from like Wichita, Kansas. So like smack dead fucking center in the Bible Belt is terrible. But like, I would hear them say that shit all the time. And it's more like they're trying to convince themselves than they are of you even, because they just have to keep like repeating that. But I like that you brought up the point that it's a religion that it really is designed to control people. And it has been from the beginning. I know like within the kind of anarchist or natural law community that like Logan and I, our background kind of comes from, that there's a lot of people that have this idea that Jesus was an anarchist, or that it was a religion of freedom and rebels when it first started. And like, I got to tell you, if you think that, go read a fucking book. That's not how it started at all. It started as a religion of control from the fucking get-go. It was never anything based in sovereignty or free will. Jesus wasn't an anarchist, I'll say that. So people can get, if you got offended, let me know in the comments below. Yeah. But, it's not a religion based on freedom or honoring anyone's sovereignty or anything like that. It's the exact opposite.
Really, really good point. It's a really good point, because it is such an insidious infection.
Yep.
That this is why we need to be able to look at our unconscious. It's so important. This is why ritual, meditation, mantra, qigong, all that, whatever, pick your favorite one. It's really important, because if you do that in concert with the conscious intention to become a critical thinker, you do that so you can look at your own unconscious program. And what I hear in that, which I see everywhere, is that even people who consciously are seeking to break away from what they know is a toxic religion, a toxic mindset, they're still programmed by it, because they can't walk away from trying to find a way to make Jesus fit. Because on an unconscious level, they still believe if they reject Jesus, they're going to go to hell. And a good example is, I had a friend of mine who we were friends, in college, and then we didn't talk for, the last time we talked, he started saying he was going to become a Christian. And I went, oh. And I don't know if I said anything, but it was like, I can't have anything more to do with that guy, because I just couldn't be around it, because I was still deprogramming. So 20 years later, we run into each other, and he says, hey, I was a Christian, and he says, I'm deprogramming, and it was a total cult and all that. And so, I'm there to, like we're doing now, bag on how fucked up Christianity is. And the three, him and me and his girlfriend, were eating dinner, and he and I were going at it. And of course, she didn't know what the hell we were talking about. And he stopped and he said, my girlfriend probably doesn't understand why we're so, passionately against Christianity, because, she's only seen it from the outside. She didn't really get into it as deeply as you and I did. And she goes, yeah, I don't understand what you guys are so upset about. I mean, these are just people that are wanting some kind of connection, and they're looking for some kind of grace. And I said, that's a good point. The question is, why do you need grace? What did you do? There's nothing wrong with being human that you need to be forgiven of something.
Yep.
But that was her first response, that somehow grace was equal to spirituality, that forgiveness meant spirituality.
Yeah.
And it, that now we look at it in context of Odin's, fury towards me, talking about, why the hell is somebody sacrificing himself for your enlightenment? That's the worst thing anybody could do. I would kill that guy if he did that for me. He's a coward. It's just from the perspective of somebody coming from that, tradition for tens of thousands of years, that is a logical response. For somebody who has been unconsciously programmed and, genetically unconsciously programmed to have to believe in Jehovah and Jesus, even if you say, yes, I'm polytheist. Like a lot of people, they go, they practice Hinduism or whatever it is that they do, but they still have to come back and talk about, yeah, Jesus loves everybody. And that's the important part. We'll just take the Jesus loves everybody part. It still means that you're not willing to analyze what you believe. You're not willing to take a look at the fear within that says, I'm afraid. And I can't speak for anybody else, but the most traumatic experience of my life was rejecting Christianity. I'm not doing this because I think it's cool and fun. I mean, it was horrific. I was certain I was going to hell. I knew it. And I was consciously choosing to go to hell because I couldn't tolerate the thought that I was worshiping the actual God that existed, who was going to throw people in hell for no reason. And if that meant I was going to go to hell, I'm going to go to hell. And our ancestors did the same thing. There was one guy, I forget his name, Kyofi, something like that. He was an Anglo-Saxon pagan priest who converted to Christianity. And I'm getting my stories mixed up. Anyway, one guy, there was a pagan guy, Anglo-Saxon, and the Catholic guy was trying to convert him and said, if you convert to this and if you get baptized, you'll, be saved and be a part of Jesus, blah, 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 and go to heaven. You won't go to hell, you'll go to heaven. And he said, will my ancestors be there? And he goes, no, they didn't accept Jesus. And he goes, well, why the hell would I go someplace where I'd be away from those brave people? Screw that, I'm going to go to hell. I mean, that people still are unwilling to truly die for the truth.
One thing you said that really struck a chord with me about the grace thing, and just taking me back to, I formally rejected Christianity over 12 years ago now, and I'm still purging from the programming and from specifically the shame. That's what really stood out to me in what you were saying, Michael, is how much shame there is about everything, every part of being human. You're ashamed for being born. You're ashamed for having a body, a naked body and genitals and everything. You have shame for wanting money, for having desires, for, wanting, just to experience like the nice things in life. There's shame around all of that. And you're told that those things are less pious, less pure, less, celestial or whatever. And that's so missing such a big part about why we incarnated as human beings and what all this has to offer for us as an experience.
Yeah, and I like what was said earlier about Jesus was a rebel, and that need to bring him into your thing, whatever that is. If you're whatever it is, what chaos guy, what do you call that? I'm sorry, I used a word.
Anarchist, yeah.
An anarchist. So you're an anarchist, and that's how you identify yourself. So you're a rebel, right? And you're a rebel for the right cause. And so therefore we're going to use the default religious person to back us up. Oh yeah, and by the way,
mascot.
Jesus,
Right.
But that I've made a lot of videos on my channel about exposing Gnosticism, because that's a typical response from a New Age person who doesn't want to follow the Bible or Jehovah or any of the other stuff, but they still want to hang on to the idea of Jesus. So they say, no, but the original Jesus, he was this Gnostic teacher. And I go, yeah, so what is Gnosticism about? It's about denial of self, that your body is bad, that physicality is bad. Jesus was so pure, he wasn't even physical. He was just this non-physical being. And then you have, instead of Jehovah, you have the demiurge, which is like the devil, which is Jehovah. And he's created this physical world, which is bad. And then you have the heaven, which is good. What a mind fuck. Whereas our ancestors said, yeah, I've got this body and it's got these great things. I can have sex with it. I can do all this fun stuff with it, and I can enjoy life and ride horses and whatever the hell it is. That the idea that being three-dimensional is somehow bad. Instead, it was like, no, this is a cool place. We came to have fun. We
Yep.
we incarnated in this really cool, fun thing. It's nothing bad about that. And then there's these other 9 worlds, and they do these other things, and those are cool too. But yeah, like you said, rejection. It's self-hatred. If we say we hate this world and we hate our flesh and we hate the earth, you're saying you hate yourself, because what are you? You're this physical being.
You are it.
And then
Yeah.
it just creates nothing but misery.
I love that you brought that up, because that's been a big lesson with me. Working, Venus is my Ishtadevata, so I work with Freya a lot. And that was a huge lesson that I got from her, was just the devotion to just be. That like this place, this body, this is where it happens. This is just, spirituality doesn't happen in the 10th dimension, not while you're riding a fucking unicorn on, like on a flying, like on a rainbow. Like it's here. Like this is where it happens. And the devotion to being a human being, like that's a beautiful experience. But you both also brought up some points that I think tie very well together in regards to how Christianity, one of the ways it really goes about controlling people. And it's the total difference in the linear progression of life, that you just have this one life, this one little chance, and then you die, and then that is you're judged for eternity based off of that. That's a totally different foundational mindset to operate from than what we see within a polytheistic culture, where we believe in reincarnation, and for the purpose of learning, experiencing, and growing, and knowing that you're going to do that over and over again from different perspectives, because there's no fucking way you could ever get it in just one lifetime. Like you just kind of like, you have to do it over and over again from different perspectives. Well, that is when you have that kind of a mindset, death is not something you fear. It's not something that you're punished for, any of this. So for them to control society, one of the first things they had to do was really get in this kind of linear, like you just have this one shot, and if you fuck up, you're tortured for eternity. When people believe that and they operate, it's a trauma-based mindset. It's trauma-based mind control is what it is. It ties back into the concept that Michael, I first came across the concept of the ghost door within the Bagua from you, but as Logan and I have applied it to the Aish Homer, we've done an episode called the unconscious feedback loop, where if we look at the 9 worlds and the different psychological aspects they represent of ourselves, we can see that unconscious realm in Helheim, that opens up that ghost door. But when you start doing that, it actually kind of creates a feedback loop where you're essentially just getting like stuck in this loop, because the unconscious trauma leads into the belief systems. And then that's where those become solidified. That feeds into our ego. Because of our ego, we act on it. It gets into the subconscious. We continue to take actions. It goes into the unconscious. And it's just this feedback loop that cuts us off from actually being able to connect with other people, connect with our ancestors, and connect with the realm of the north, which is unmanifested potential. So we can't change anything. We just get stuck in the same trauma-based loop. And it all goes down to that unconscious programming, that trauma that has been put into our society over and over again. And then people are acting from this, and they're just stuck in this trauma loop that they can't get out of, and it keeps them stuck in dogma.
I don't know if you realize this, but you just explained Khalsar Yoga. Have you heard of that?
I have not, no, but this was something that Logan and I, we were looking at the Aish one day, and I was kind of like explaining it to him, and it like dawned on me of like what it really is. And I was like, well, fuck, that's good. Like,
just totally blew my mind. And let me share it with you. And it's perfect, because we'll have to look. So do me a favor. I'm going to stop talking so the camera will go back on you. And then I want you to point from the southwest to the northeast for just a second. So go ahead.
Yeah. So this would be Helheim in the southwest, and then this is the northeast. This is Asgard.
Okay. So what you just pointed to was the 2 directions of the nodes of the moon. Southwest is Rahu, and the northeast is Ketu. So Ketu and Rahu are a serpent. And so in somebody's chart, when all of the planets are on one side of Rahu and Ketu, and there's no planets on the other side, then those planets are hemmed in. So it means that it's a really negative thing where they get trapped in obsession
Yeah.
or, you know, self denial,
Oh.
you know. And so as we
That
know,
makes
these are the
sense.
karmic nodes. What you've
Yeah.
just described is, now I know what Khalsar Yoga is. Because what you're talking about is you get trapped in the southwest, which has a
Right.
back door to the northeast,
Door.
which is what? Ketu. So it goes from Rahu to
Back
Ketu,
in
and
the
then
dance of the
you go
serpent.
through half of the cycle. You don't go through
Yeah.
the whole cycle.
Cool.
You get trapped in half of the cycle. And so now I totally get it. I mean, I keep hearing about this Khalsar Yoga and planets are in
Yeah.
Rahu and Ketu, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. This is not. Now I
Yeah.
get it.
That makes perfect sense too, because it's also Rahu and Ketu are shadow planets. They're not, you know, they're not visible grahas that we see with our eyes. They're just shadow planets, so they always operate on an unconscious or kind of subconscious level that's there. So, you know, definitely like within our belief systems and the realm of the unconscious, especially with Rahu, you know, and our desires. So yeah, that makes so much sense that how
Yeah,
planets being trapped between them would kind of keep them stuck in a certain way, because it's just this dance back and forth between Rahu and Ketu, but they can't escape out of it. So yeah, that's a very interesting point. But yeah, that's
you
something that
never,
we've been terming the unconscious feedback loop.
it's perfect.
You know, like
This is what I love about syncretism, because here, you know, we've got the Aesh Yalmer behind you, which is the
yeah,
8 gates, which I learned from Taoism. I didn't really
right,
know what that meant. I just knew, you know, from having worked with the 8 directions that they're different. Great. Then I start getting into, you know, runes and all of that, and the Aesh Yalmer, and I go, hey, let's do this weird thing, and let's put the runes in the 8 doors, and oh, hey, that works really well. Let's
works really well.
treating this like this is something that's real. And then you guys are taking that thing that I've, you know, sort of Frankenstein together, and then you
Yep.
come up with this awareness of, look, you get this ghost door, which is a Taoist understanding, and you're using it with the 9 worlds, that is a Norse understanding. And now we bring in Vedic astrology, and we go, that's the missing piece that explains Khalsar Yoga. And now I think we have a deeper understanding of why Khalsar Yoga is a big deal, because normally you go, okay, so all the planets are on one side of Rahu and Ketu, why is that a big deal? Well, it's because, like you're saying, is that the human soul never gets past a certain, you know, limited experience. It goes from the ego to the unconscious, you know, self-flagellation back up into manifestation in the ego, and then the actions, and it never gets past to the west, which is awareness, which then goes to the northwest, which is moksha, which goes back to then recreation. And
Right.
so that'll tell you what that person needs now. I mean, you
Yeah.
guys just did something I love. I love that this happened, because this has been my whole goal of all this whole thing. You know, I didn't create any of this. The stuff that I've come together, I didn't create it. I'm just picking up, you know, these guys said this and that works. These guys said this. Let's see what happens. If this is a science and we put this together, this should fit. Oh, fits perfectly. And we'll take this. Nope, that doesn't fit. All right, let's put that out. And, you know, it's not having an agenda of my thing or your thing. It's let's find the thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And if we look back, to bring all full circle, if we look back at the Hopi mythology that says that we were all one tribe at one point, and, you know, whatever, our highest awareness said, let's go off into different directions and master the 5 elements or the 4 elements. Then let's come back together and let's put this thing together, and then we can reach, you know, our highest evolution, which is what the Hopi said, is that when the white man comes, because they knew he was coming, so when the white man comes to what we call the New World, if he's wearing a cross within a circle, which is our ancestors before Christianity would wear these Odin, you know, the Eye of Odin, which is a cross within a circle. If they come over with a cross within a circle, they've remembered who they are and that we're brothers and we're going to come together and we're going to create heaven on earth. If he shows up and he's wearing a cross outside of a circle, then he's forgotten who he is, and you better run for the hills because he's going to bring death and destruction. And it's interesting because the descendants of the Goths, who were, you know, Germanic people who must have used that same symbol, the Spaniards were the first people who showed up, and they showed up wearing the, you know, Catholic cross with no circle. And, you know, now what you guys have just done today is you've taken this, you know, I'm trying to do this thing. I'm not creating any of this. I'm just bringing things together that I see and trying to make it fit. And then you made this connection based on Taoist understanding of the Bagua and the 9 worlds of the Norse tree. And, you know, it's like, this is what this is about. This is my dream. My dream is that we become these adventurers that are able to get our own personal shit out of the way and say, let's put this thing back together. And this is what the Hopis were saying, is that eventually when all of the tribes of the human race come back together and they bring whatever they've learned in their different, you know, things over the past 100,000 years, that then, you know, the human race will evolve to the next level. So you guys just made another contribution to that.
Yeah,
so
well, we appreciate that.
Bringing that to my attention. That's really amazing.
Yeah, I'm glad you appreciate it. No, because it's definitely like a concept, like without your work that you've put out there on the ghost store and things, like it was me learning about that kind of, and as well as you teach 9 worlds, that then kind of let me put those pieces together. And that's like you're saying within the Hopi myth, it's about us all kind of going out on our own paths, our own journey, and coming together to share what we've learned. And it's a beautiful process to see. And this is something that Logan and I kind of, we refer to this concept of like modern paganism, in the sense of like, you see a lot of people who are just getting into paganism, or, you know, especially like within the Alsapru community and things like that, that they'll kind of still bring a lot of these monotheistic filters, and they're like, oh no, the Eddas say this, so it has to be this way. And they're kind of stuck in the way things were in the past.
It's fundamentalist.
Like, yeah, we operate more from the perspective of like, it's great to learn the unbroken traditions that go all the way back. Those are wonderful to learn to, but you don't have to stay stuck there. Like it's about evolving. Like it's taking like our ancestors didn't have access to the technology that we have today, and if they did, they would have been using it, because especially the Germanic people were very practical people. Yeah. Like if it works, you incorporate it into your life and you start using it because it improves your life. Well, we have very unique opportunities where we can connect with people and from other traditions and other cultures in an instant. Like on the other side of the world, we don't have to get in a long ship and travel all the way there. We have so many wonderful. So it's about tapping into that beauty and that wisdom of the past, as well as developing new understandings to continue to take that forward. So that, I really love being able to take different concepts and unite them in a way that works in a new understanding.
Yeah. And, we're all, there's no static, we can take a snapshot and we can look at evolution in a snapshot, and which is what we do when we look at religion, which is wonderful. I do it. I love doing it. You guys know, I love the past. But if we're realistic about it, there's no such thing as a snapshot. Everything is an evolution of something else, and everything is a result of a mixture of things going forward. Mm-hmm. And to not understand that is, people have to come at it from whatever they have to come at it as, and I'm with you. You've heard me go on about the limitations of, neo anything. But I agree. They're taking that Christian monotheist fundamentalist attitude, and even though they're trying to get away from it, because some of the people who are the most vocal against Christianity will be neo-pagans and neo-heathens, but at the same time, they're taking that approach to scripture and using it with, like you said, the Eddas. And I think one person even created like a heathen Bible. They tried to put together the myths in an order, so the irony. It's not even hypocrisy, because it's just irony, that they can't see. But do you realize you're just doing the Christian thing with the Norse mythology? You don't see that yet?
Yeah, which is what the Christians took with like all our mythologies anyway, and then they kind of put it all together in an amalgamation of something they could actually use to get people to convert. But no, it's that whole, like what we were talking about earlier, where like with Gnosticism or people like, you know, like within the freedom or the anarchist community, they really kind of want to keep putting Christianity on, keep putting Jesus on this pedestal. And like I said, it goes to that trauma-based like mind control of like where they want to deny, like their soul, their intellect sees that it doesn't make sense and they want to reject that, but there's still that trauma-based mind control, that epigenetic memory, because it's been forced by the sword for thousands of years of like, oh, you can't commit blasphemy. Like you can't say anything bad about Jesus. And so they try to keep, it's like they try to keep one foot in each pond. Right.
Yeah,
and they can't decide which one to actually get in.
right. And so, you know, I mean, you know, I'm not an anarchist, so I don't know. I only know what I look at it. And of course, I'm only responding to the, you know, to the extremes of it. But I liken it to Satan worship. Now, if anybody knows anything about Satanists, you know, real Satanists are not people who sacrifice babies and worship demons and kill. That's not what a Satanist does. A Satanist is somebody who uses the idea of the anti-God to go against this, you know, as they see. They obviously see that Jehovah is a bad guy and he's, you know, hypocritical and evil and all that. But the thing is that you can't have a devil without a God. You can't have a devil without a Jehovah. So you can't, on the one hand, say, I reject Jehovah and I'm going to worship Satan, because Satan is the antithesis, supposedly, of Jehovah. So it's a reaction. You're still unconsciously worshiping Jehovah like kids do. They rebel against their parents. And lots of times they're trying to get negative attention. What they really want is they want mommy and daddy to love them, and they do that by rebelling. Anybody, you know, I don't have kids, you have kids, you probably know it better than I do, but that's trying to get negative attention.
Yeah.
So it's so like you're saying, they're trying to get Jesus, and they're going to say, no, Jesus is ours. On an unconscious level, they still, like you said, they're coming from a trauma-based thing. They're afraid of mommy and daddy rejecting them. But the way we're going to do that is we're going to paint our face black, and we're going to stand up and we're going to rebel, and I hate you, mommy, and all that. And it's still part of the same cycle. You haven't left it. It's like the Khalsar Yoga. You're bouncing back and forth between the southeast and the north, the northeast and the southwest.
Yeah, I like that you brought up Satanism as an example, because I think really the best way to summarize like Satanism is not even so much that they don't actually worship the idea of Satan as a deity or anything. That's more they just will do to kind of trigger Christians out. But it's ritualized atheism. But we can very much see, and Logan and I have spoke about this on the show, how atheism really is kind of a trauma-based knee-jerk reaction of going to the other polarity as a rejection, out of a rejection of monotheism, of, oh, God and religion means this thing, so now I'm not going to believe in any of it. Rather than even looking at the other options like paganism and polytheism and other things like that.
Because it still shows that in their mind there's only two choices, which is monotheism. There's either God or there's nothing. If there is a God, there's the one God that we worship. And if that God isn't it, then there's nothing. And so they've been programmed, even if they're not in a religious home, just by being in a Western society, you're programmed as a monotheist, whether you realize it or not. And so they've come to the logical conclusion, maybe because their parents were Christians and were abusive. That obviously would explain a lot. But even if not, you look at it and you go, this is ridiculous. You know, this Christian-based society is so destructive. I'm going to reject that. The assumption is that the only choice is there's no God, which really means that you still believe in God, you just don't like him. And and we didn't see that before monotheism came into existence. You didn't see atheists. You saw people who had different belief systems. You had people who said they're panentheists. I don't know what it is, but it's in everything. Or no, it's this elephant-headed guy. And, they had different beliefs. And then you could believe one thing and this other guy could believe another thing. And you could have a common phrase would be, oh, that's his God. And that's okay. He has his God. It's okay for somebody to say, yeah, I don't really believe in one God. I think that there's this Brahman, which is in everything. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it was okay. You had all kinds of choices. You could pick whatever you want, but there was this understanding that there was something there. And that seemed kind of universally understood. It's only in modern times where first you have monotheism, which desacralizes everything, which again is Gnosticism as well. It desacralizes the sacred, which is Mother Earth, which is every plant, every rock, every tree, every molecule is filled with sacred energy. And Christianity destroyed that, because if you worship the rocks and the trees, you weren't going to church worshiping the God that's going to control you, like we explained, and get you to do everything that we're telling you to do. So we have to demonize anything that isn't this intellectual idea of God. Therefore, we can control you. That's new. That's brand new. That's only been introduced into the world over, since the idea that Jehovah came into existence. It's 300 BC or whatever it was. Until that time, nobody thought like that. This is a brand new way of thinking, but it's now so ingrained that people can't even let go of their belief in this really fucked up idea of spirituality in exchange for another one, because they still can't walk away from the feeling of there has to be one God. I'm just going to rebel against him and just not believe in him. I'm going to punish him. Atheism is a way of punishing this evil God. I'm not going to believe in Santa Claus, therefore he'll go away. Right. So
I like that you brought up that separation from nature, and how like the church, they very much attack that. And a lot of people may not know this, but within the Germanic culture, there was something known as going to sit out, or sitting out, where you would go sit in the woods, you would connect with nature, you would be just observing, worshiping nature, right? Well, that was actually made illegal. There was a law passed against it. I believe it was in the 1500s, if I'm correct. I could be wrong on that, but sometime within the medieval ages, there was a law passed against it too, and it was such a sin that to confess to that, you couldn't even go to a regular priest. You had to go to a bishop in order to get. They very much, like, they literally made it a law that you're not allowed to go out and connect with nature by yourself like that, to go out and sit and meditate. I'll have to look up exactly what that was and what year has passed. But yeah, that was something when I came across it, I was like, man, that just really goes to show you how much they just very directly attack that connection with nature. It's a very disgusting thing.
And then think about how popular it is and intense the desire is for Caucasian Americans and people, I guess Caucasians, Western people all over the world, who are from this tradition. I mean, from ethnically from that tradition, they want to be learn how to do Native American spirit quest. And their feeling is, I'm doing this other thing from this other culture. And, I went to sweat lodges and all of that. That's that same idea. But that's because this is in our DNA. It's only been out of our DNA, according to you, for 500 years. Yeah. It's only been the last 500 years that it's been outlawed, that people can't go into nature and have a spirit quest. They can't sit out. That's really amazing. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it really is. And it just goes to show you how strong the animist, or Thomas Sheridan said this once, that he gave a lecture called "Everybody's a Pagan," and I think it's one of his best lectures he's ever given. But when you really come down and you think about it, like, every human being, like, we can all look out at nature and see the beauty in it. Like, we can all observe something and, like, get a lesson from it. And that's all animism and paganism is. It's just being connected with the world around us. We're all a pagan at heart. It's all the programming and the trauma-based mind control that has gotten in the way of us being able to have that connection. I thought that was such a interesting law that passed, even in regard. Mushrooms is kind of a hobby of mine, and in the Germanic culture, like, ingesting mushrooms and things, they very much culture, even if they weren't a psychedelic mushroom, just mushrooms in general were used for brewing mead and things like that. And in some of the alcohol laws that were passed trying to control the pagans, they outlawed the use of mushrooms to brew certain alcohols. There was only a certain list of things you could use, like barley and wheat. Is very, very limited on what you could actually use to brew and create, beers and alcohol and things like that. So, they really did everything they could. And keep in mind, these were laws that were passed that were enforced by the sword, right? They forced people like into this state of disconnect from nature, of not being able to go out and commune with it, or to even just go sit and to observe and to connect that way. Like this was a religion that is all about control.
Yeah. So that would have been, I would imagine, part of the ceremony if you're working with mushrooms, especially if they're, if they've got some entheogenic properties to them. You would go do that out in nature. And so so obviously the fear is that if you have an entheogenic trip out in nature, you're going to connect with some being other than Jesus or Jehovah, which is, against.
Might discover yourself. They don't want that. Like, yep. Yeah. It really is amazing the links they've went through to cut us off from that. A great book that, especially if you're wanting to get into the early history of Christianity and kind of get rid of this totally fairy tale idea that Christianity was anything that was ever worth a shit. A great book to read is The Darkening Age by Catherine Nixie. She does an excellent job going into that book of the early history of Christianity, how they, like they destroyed the Library of Alexandria, for example. Like all that knowledge in the Library of Alexandria that was gathered by pagans. Like that was a pagan place where people of all different beliefs, different backgrounds, different interests could go there to study. And people don't know this. It was Christianity that destroyed that library, and like, if you've ever seen the movie Agora, that tells the story of the Greek philosopher Hypatia, an astronomer, brilliant female mind, who with her work of astrology and understanding of however the movement of the planets and things, she was very focused on that kind of area. They ended up taking her, even though she hadn't done anything, because she was a woman that men looked up to, and she gave advice. In the Christian worldview, that was a sinful thing, as a blasphemous thing. And they took this woman, like took her into the temple, flayed her alive with broken pieces of pottery, dismembered her body, threw her torso on the altar, and then took the rest of her body and spread it around the city. Like this is Christianity. This is how it was brought in. It wasn't done through trying to help people. It was done through burning temples, through burning books, through literally killing and beheading people to get people to convert. It was never a religion of peace and love as it's been presented. Like, that's the gaslighted version. And people who are still believing that, it's because you have Stockholm syndrome. If you're like, the Western people are very much in a state of Stockholm syndrome because of monotheism.
Absolutely. And I think it even goes, as I've said, I think it goes even before. I think Christianity was an afterthought, a much better, it's like the best afterthought. But, I think that slavery, even that is a result of specifically the Germanic people. You don't see it as much in those that the Germanic people conquered. You don't see it in the Celtic world as much, but in the Germanic, the people who are of Germanic descent are the people who are most likely to want to associate with something other than their own background, to the point where we don't even know. I mean, I never grew up knowing, what my background was. You go to school, and the first thing you learn about is Western civilization, which is you're basically told that you're a Sumerian. And then from a Sumerian, you became a Greek. And from a Greek, you became a Roman. And then when the Romans became Christians, then all of a sudden we magically popped up somewhere in Northwestern Europe. Of course, nobody says it like that, but that's definitely what you walk away with. So much so that the the intelligentsia that I'm watching on YouTube who are talking about history are talking about their ancestors in the third person under this general banner
Right.
of the barbarians and the way the barbarians thought and what the barbarians did. And this guy's clearly an Anglo-Saxon, and he doesn't have the ability to go, yeah, my ancestors, when they were here,
Right.
there's something else. There's something other than us, which I
Yep.
think was, that's why I think Christianity was adopted, was legally adopted, because it was the perfect, this Gnostic, I hate myself and I'm this victim, and I can be saved through this. Let's turn that into something even more powerful and use it as a way to not only control our people, but now we have this really great tool to go in and conquer other people. And we have the Roman, what the Romans used to do is they said, we're the light of civilization. So they started that whole thing of, we're conquering the barbarians with the light of civilization. But now we've got the light of God, and God's going to come in and save your soul. And if you don't want to accept God, you're going to go to hell anyway. We'll just chop your head off. And like you said, I was, and you think about, this is gaslighting, where you think about, you have this belief that Christianity was this thing that people chose to do and it peacefully happened. Nobody tells you that, but you walk away with this belief. Mm-hmm. And that's where the gaslighting really is, that we have this version of history. Nobody ever really told it to us. Did anybody ever really tell me that? No, but how did I come up with that idea? This is the power of this kind of gaslighting. This is why it's all in the unconscious. It's so important to be critical.
Yeah, it definitely so much unconscious trauma, and especially and it's like in our blood now. Like after 2,000 years, generations and generations, when you bring in the science and understanding of epigenetics, you see how trauma-based mind control gets passed on like genetically, and the expression of that trauma, the result of it, comes out more and more prominently to the point that 2,000 years later, look at our Western society. Look how much Christianity created victims out of everybody. Yeah. It really brought in the whole victimhood mentality, because your fundamental assumption that your worldview is built off of is that you're sinful, and it wasn't anything that you did. You're just a victim of it. Like, you have no power to control it. All you can do is pray and hope this Jesus sacrifice saves you. So it totally puts you into the state of a victimhood mindset. And then we have people that nowadays they like to play the game of what Logan and I like to call the victim Olympics, of trying to see who can identify with the most minority groups or the most oppressed group to see how many victim gold medals they can get. And whoever has the most and whoever's the most oppressed, now they all of a sudden get this sense of entitlement that, I was this and this and this, and all my group and my race and my religion, we've all been repressed. And that's especially like among like the modern like political left, you can see that as a group that very much like has bought into that whole, trying to win the victim Olympics kind of mindset, as we like to refer to it.
If you look at that historically, then that shows the genius of it, because when you conquer somebody, and the Romans didn't do this all the time, but they did in some cases, but then when they adopted Christianity, they did it all the time, which was when they went in to conquer somebody, they also destroyed their religion. And they did it as a mandate from God. What a perfect way then, because you've now victimized people. And if you have really come in and destroyed them, massacred them, enslaved them, taken away their language, their culture, how can you help but feel like a victim? And then it's, okay, we got our religion. Here, take our religion. And so then, of course, they're going to identify with Jesus. Of course, they're going to identify with being a victim. And now you have perfected the infection, and they'll pass it on to their kids. And, and I think, again, this is going back, this is what I think happened to the Germanic people. Because, Celts will go on and on about their tradition and their blah, blah, and other people and everybody, African Americans, Native Americans, understandably, they can talk about, Germanic people never even acknowledge that they had a past. They talk about themselves as the barbarians. Yep. So we're still, among all of them, we are as much dealing with this unconscious victim trauma, to the point where we project it onto the rest of the world. We enslave all the cultures we came in contact with. We destroy them. We do all the things that were done to our ancestors by the Romans. And we never acknowledged, you know, the whole slavery mentality. We never acknowledged it. And it's 2,000 years later, we're still doing it. And that's the sad part. And the ironic part is, where do you see, you know, white supremacy the strongest? Within Germanic cultures. What does that tell you? It tells you that that's their projection, that they see themselves as less than human. They see themselves as slaves. And so they project that onto the people they come in contact with. You know, the Spaniards did it. You know, the Anglo-Saxons did it. Obviously in Germany, the Nazis did it. And these are the people who were suffering, you know, who were on the front edge of the Roman conquering empire. You know, the guys on the outside didn't get it as much. But, you know, so to me, there's just no mystery why this all erupted out of Germany, Anglo-Saxons, because we haven't acknowledged it. And if it weren't for the Scandinavians, if it was specifically the Icelanders, if it weren't for the Icelanders who had the opportunity to slowly and peacefully convert to Christianity, we wouldn't even know what our ancestral mythology was, because they were the only people that kept it, because they weren't so, you know, they were able to hold on to it and say, oh, this is our cute little background, and still worship the elves and still, you know, worship Jesus and kind of have that half and half. And if it weren't for them, we wouldn't even know. We wouldn't know who we were.
Yeah. I like that you brought up the white supremacy and how they're kind of coming, they see themselves as slaves and victims, because if you go within the philosophy of like the Ku Klux Klan and the Aryan Brotherhood and things like that, those groups very much specifically, they very much see themselves as like they're, you know, like within the Klan, they see themselves as fighting what they call Zog, which is like the Zionist, you know, they're really coming from this place of, oh, we think, you know, the Jews and everybody, they're all trying to wipe out their white race. They're all trying to kill it. It's still this feeling of, oh, we're being attacked, so now we have to try to overcompensate by dominating. But yeah, I love that you brought up that feeling, or that feeling of why that's there is because of the violation that did happen as Christianity started to influx into, you know, our culture. And yeah, it's just, I really think the way for us, especially as European people, to go about healing that disconnect and all of that is to use that, tap into that fire element that we're talking about, and use that to purify and to burn away all the Christian programming. Like, you know, to me, you know, it's just going through and like applying critical thinking, even like and using that. You know, like with Jesus, one thing I like to think about is, you know, the irony of like why anyone thinks Jesus could ever save them. Like, and he wasn't even good at his job. Like, I mean, he was a carpenter that ended up nailed to some boards. You know? So, you know, let's talk about irony. Like, the guy's not even good at his job. So why, you know, that guy's not going to save you. You know, you're better off learning from an archetype like Odin.
Yeah.
So,
do we want to kind of start wrapping it up?
Yeah, that was later. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a really good talk.
Thanks, guys, for letting me come on and, you know,
of course,
ranting and raving. And thanks for sharing with now my new understanding of Khalsar Yoga. And I'm really looking forward now to seeing more of what you guys do. And I'm happy, you know, go back and forth, and maybe we can have, you know, more, bring you onto my channel and vice versa. I'd love to see that.
We would love that.
That'd be great. Maybe we try like a live broadcast or something like that, get more engagement.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, we'd love that. But yeah, we'll kind of pick it up and we'll kind of wrap up.
I'm not done with this conversation.
Yeah. I know, right?
No, it's good.
We can put a bookmark in it for now, but yeah.
Right.
Just pick it up. Yeah.
To be continued for sure. But we sure appreciate you coming on and joining us on our channel, Michael. It's been a very interesting and enlightening conversation. Of course, we'll have you back at some time, but why don't you tell the viewers what you're up to and where they can find you?
So you can find me at thunderwizard.com. That is my subscription site where you can go if you want to become an apprentice, work with me personally. You can also go to the free YouTube channel, thunderwizard.com, thunderwizard, DOTCOM. And, there's options there as well. And yeah, I mean, I could go on and on. But you start there. And if anything hits your fancy, you'll have options to connect with me more.
Yep. And we'll put the links to Michael's channel below. And for those of you who have not read the book or would like to read the book, Odin Says Jesus Was a Coward. Very, very affordable, very good book. As well as all your other books, Michael. I think some of your best work is in your books. Even they're all wonderful. But this is one that, if you're a fan of the channel, read this book, because if you're resonating with us, this is something that you'll get a lot out of. Again, Michael, being one of my gurus, thank you very much for joining us. This is a wonderful conversation. I've learned so much from you. And everybody else, thank you for joining us. If you have not yet, be sure to go to thewizardfactory.com and check out our free initiation package. We have in there a toolbox video series that teaches you how to cast the Circle of the Magi, work with the runes, as well as some other meditative practices. And it also gives you free access to our Facebook Inner Sanctum group, where if you're wanting more personal interaction with us, to ask us questions, things like that, that group is where that kind of more close-knit tribe interaction goes on. Let us know what you thought of the episode, your opinions, and anything, that we brought up that really resonated with you. Let us know what that is in the comment, and what your thoughts are on things. And until next week, be empowered, be inspired, and be encouraged.
All right, so let's see, we're done with that. Let me see, is that what I want to do? There we go. Okay, so we're done with that. So that was a really fun, as you can tell, I really enjoyed just having a discussion with those guys. That discussion could have gone on for hours, and so we had to just put a pin in it for later. So I do look forward to having further interactions with those guys. That was a lot of fun. So this is a question and answer. If you do have questions for me, do me a favor, write the word question and then leave a question. A lot of you want to leave opinions, especially if you're new to the channel. That's not what I do on my question and answers. As you noticed, I've deleted some of the comments on there, and that's when the discussion starts going off in another direction. Or if somebody starts talking about another teaching, or I don't want to do that here. I want to stay focused on what we're talking about. Somebody did start a discussion with me. In fact, they're continuing to do it, which I'll look into. But before I do that, the bottom line of much of what I'm trying to say in this interview is that you have to know what your emotional attachments are to your beliefs. And I'm going to get into that with somebody here today who's now wanting to interact with me, trying to give an opposing viewpoint on some opinions that I've shared. So I'll continue with that. I touched on it briefly here, but in order to truly understand how it is that Christianity, the beliefs behind Christianity and the self-deprecation of the human being, the destruction of human divinity, which is what I'm saying Christianity teaches. You have to look at the precursor to Christianity, which would be Gnosticism. Now, Gnosticism wasn't just Christian, by the way. There was Jewish Gnosticism. And as somebody points out here, the precursor to Gnosticism starts in some of the other ancient empires that were, almost contemporaries of Christianity. The Greek Platonic philosophical tradition, and the Persians. And so, if you haven't already done it, I recommend that everybody take a look at my videos on Gnosticism. Just a second here. I'm getting. All right, so I'm gonna listen. Now we're getting into the question and answer, and so that's all I want. I just want question and answers. I'm really not interested in blurting stuff out. I know it's a free for all on a lot of live streams, but not on my channel. So if you've got a question, I'm happy to take it. If it's an honest question. Other than that, I don't have time for that. It distracts me, as you just saw. So the precursor to Christianity, we could say, is Gnosticism. And what are the general beliefs of Gnosticism? Gnosticism, and the reason why I'm pointing it out is because a lot of people who want to hang on to Christianity, understandably, I did. I wanted to hang on to the idea of the good Jesus. You know, what people will say, yeah, but, you know, the church, they got in and they messed up the original message of Jesus. And what Jesus really meant was, the only problem is you don't have any written evidence of any other Jesus other than the one in the Bible. The Jesus that you find in the Gnostic texts, for instance, may not focus on some of the dogma of Christianity, but the basic underlying thing is still the same, which is that you're screwed and you need somebody to save you from this horrible world. And so we have to ask the question, first off, when somebody says that to you, do you have an emotional reaction? Do you want to speak up and say, yes, finally somebody is defending me. I am a victim in this horrible world, and this world is horrible, and there's all this spiritual pressure, and we need to transcend and get to true spirituality. And then they start turning Jesus into this representation of the true spirituality. In fact, many of the Gnostics taught that Jesus wasn't a physical person, that he was non-physical. And so this goes to this whole idea of the demiurge and then the original, you know, I don't know all the words for it, but the demiurge is what a lot of people would replace Jehovah. They'll say, oh yes, Jehovah is evil because it's the demiurge. And this demiurge, basically what they're saying is that it's the creator that makes everything physical and dense. And physical life is bad, spiritual is good. That creates a separation between you and the divine. And so then it becomes this, you have to get reunited with the divine. You are separated. That's not a whole lot different from Catholicism or Protestant Christianity, which says that you are separated from God by sin. That sin separates you from the divine and God's love. And then on top of that, then they make it your fault. So one of the differences is that Gnosticism makes it the demiurge's fault. You know, so they blame God for it. That's why you end up with this idea that there are these archons, these false beings of light who stand guard over the earth, and then when you die and your soul tries to go back to the true spirituality, this false being of light appears and says, no, you have to go back, and it's lying to you. The assumption is that you are a victim, that you are a slave, that you are trapped. That's what the matrix is. Modern Gnosticism is the belief that there is a matrix and we need to escape it. No difference to Gnosticism, which says we have to transcend the physical and get to the pure. And that is setting up for Jesus, walking in and saying, I am the Son of God. I am the Son of the true light. And I am here to fight against this evil Lord of the earth. In fact, I was just, going through YouTube videos as I always do. There was this preacher saying that that this world is dominated by Satan, that God really doesn't control this world. He was really talking about politics. That God doesn't control politics. It's really Satan. He is the God of this world. There's no difference between that and the Gnostic demiurge. So, point is, I'm not interested in arguing with you about your religious beliefs. What I want to do is I want you to analyze your emotional attachments. If I were to sit here, and trust me, if I wanted huge followers, all I would have to do is start talking about how you're a victim. How there is this spiritual conspiracy, whether it's the archons or whether it's some cabal or whether it's Hillary Clinton underneath a pizza parlor feasting on the entrails of babies. It wouldn't matter as long as I said there was some unreachable, kind of mysterious, we can't really find out who they are, but they're there and they're doing it to you. If I did that, I would be far more successful. Instead, I say to you, you are the creator of your reality. Everything is your responsibility. And I can already feel people just going, oh, they don't want to take responsibility. But if you want to become a divine being, and I mean that in every sense of the word, if you want to be able to be a supernatural, a God man or a God woman, the first thing you have to do is you have to accept that you created everything. That's how powerful you are. So if you live in a universe where there is an evil demiurge, or if you live in a universe where there are archons or whatever, it's because you created it. The good news is if you created it, it means that you can uncreate it. But you first have to drop all of the victim mentality. And if you have a victim mentality, get honest. Don't pretend you don't have one. I'm not asking you to throw away your beliefs and your experiences. You say, you don't understand. Mahadeva, I've been in this world and you don't understand what I've been through and my struggles. And okay, talk to me about that. I won't talk you out of your experiences or your feelings. But if you can say, yeah, and all that stuff is my own creation, then you start going, why the hell would I do that? Now, people want to argue with me and they say, that's not true. Why would I do that to myself? And the question is, that's a good question. Why would you do that to yourself? If you don't know the answer, that's okay. That's what meditation is all about. That's what emptiness meditation is. Zen meditation. You sit and you're not going to be able to empty your mind, but you go and you watch all of the thoughts and the feelings as they come up. And you go, wow, that's interesting. Why am I thinking that? Why do I feel that? So let's get into it here because a person named Sata Kata wants to tell me that in a short story is that I'm wrong about Gnosticism, that there is, I don't know, they haven't made their argument yet, but they want to say that Gnosticism isn't what I'm painting it to be. So let's take a look here. Normally, I don't do this. Normally, if you just come on and ask, I only want questions. But you had to sit there for an hour and a half and listen to this other thing. So I kind of let things go. I knew there would be a lot of new people on here that didn't understand how this works, how I choose to do my live streams. So this person says, I don't know if he's talking about me. He doesn't get the evolutionary process of the macrocosm. Okay, so I don't know who. I don't know if they're talking about me right there. So Sata Kata says, okay, by the way, the information in the Gnostic literature differ from one sect to another, so it cannot all be called gnosis as it conflicts. And I said, I invite you to watch my vids about Gnosticism. He says, I know your opinion on Gnosticism and I think it's not accurate. It's okay, you can have that opinion. You can have any opinion you want. I'm probably going to be wrong about a lot of things in a lot of ways. So I say, okay, be specific. Give me a specific belief that is different in different Gnostic texts. Goes on to say, I studied Zoroastrianism and it may help in understanding Gnosticism. So look, stay on topic here. Don't divert, because I'm really good at this. If you want to get into an intellectual debate with me, I'm going to eventually lead you into a trap and I'm going to snap your head off. So people try and dodge. No, you got to be specific with me. So he says, the Valentinians and the Cathars differ on the nature of the demiurge. That doesn't mean anything to me. You have to tell me. Because what I'm wanting to get at is that I can tell he has an emotional attachment. I would much rather that he talk about his emotional attachment to Gnosticism, why he believes in Gnosticism, why it works for him. Because look, let's face it, nobody believes in anything unless there's a payoff. If you were brought up in a Christian home, you were programmed to get mommy and daddy's love and the love of the church and your society and your friends, and by believing that you're a piece of crap and that Jesus died for your sins. You're a good spiritual person if you believe. The more you believe how crappy you are and how good God is, the more you're going to be accepted in that tribe. And so there's your payoff. So that's one example. But if you're not, and you're trying to get away from that, then, and you're attracted to Gnosticism, if you get involved in Gnosticism, it means there's something about it you like. Talk to me about that. Because if we just get stuck in the intellectual thing, nothing happens here. So what I'm trying to get to is I'm trying to find out what his emotional attachment is, because that's what I want to discuss. And being a good, Gnostic, he's pretty intellectual, and so he's doing a dance with me intellectually, because he probably can sense that's what I'm doing. So I say, be specific, and I say, Sata, and how do those differences differentiate between the demiurge being good and being evil? So they still agree that physical plane is bad and spiritual plane is good. He didn't answer that question, which is really what I want to get to. Because it doesn't matter if we start talking about, oh, this sect believes the demiurge is this, and this sect believes the demiurge is that. I don't care about those differences. The assumption, first, there's an assumption that the demiurge exists, period. So that's an assumption. And he's wanting me to swallow the assumption that the demiurge exists, and I'm not ready to do that yet. I still want to know. Tell me what the demiurge is, and why do you like that idea? So I say, I'm willing to bet that the differences do not change the underlying assumption of Gnostics, which is that the physical is bad and the spiritual is good. Again, he didn't address that, which is the point. What is your emotional attachment to this world? Do you have a negative emotional attachment to this physical world? I'm okay if you do. Let's talk about it. Do you want to change that? Or do you want to stay a victim? He says, if I remember correctly, Valentinus regards the demiurge as a fool who must be enlightened, and the rectification of the cosmos, while the Cathars believe he is the antithesis that must be transcended. First off, assumption, demiurge exists. What is the demiurge? The creator. What have I just got through with my assumption? I'm giving you a different assumption. You're the creator. So right there, we've got a problem. Why do I like being the creator? Because number one, I get to understand how to make this game work for me. I get to have everything I want. Now, it goes even better than that. If you're lucky enough to get into some energetic pathways, some disciplines, you can then start changing things within your body. You can turn the organs of your body into capacitors for the 5 elements. You can turn your brain into a receptor that takes energy from the stars and the cosmos and turns it into something altogether different. You want to open up the chakras? It's interesting that there's a belief out there that the chakras are implants from aliens that are used to monitor and control you. So people want to get rid of their chakras, which is trying to meditate your spleen away, by the way. That's not going to happen. But people are looking to get rid of their control over their body. If the assumption is that all of these things are actually this amazing machine that turns you into this manifestation factory, then why do you want to not be in the physical body? This is why I go against Gnosticism. I'm not against religions and beliefs, but I'm against any belief that sets you up to be a victim. So the demiurge, according to him, regardless of what the differences are, I could give a flying fuck about the differences. The differences still assume that it's outside of you and it's created you. And either one, it's a bad thing. Because on one level, it's the fool who must be enlightened. So that's who created you? Some fool that needs to be enlightened, and you're beneath that, and it's controlling you, and it creates this world? Who the fuck wants to live in that? And the other one is, what did he say? He's the antithesis that must be transcended. Those are just variations on the same theme. Either way, you have to transcend it. Whether it's a fool or whether it's the antithesis, like the devil, you have to transcend it, which means that you're trapped. And let me help you understand something. This is why if you go onto the 90-day challenge, even if you don't do that, go onto my channel, do Thor's hammer, Qigong. Start understanding that you have this physical body, and when you're able to do these things and you can feel this power in your body that wasn't there before, then you start to realize this physical body is an amazing thing. And with it, I can start creating things and doing things and changing things and pulling in energy and connecting and leaving my body. I don't have to take any entheogens. I can just meditate and release the DMT, and I can go off to other places. You want to escape? Use the physical body. You know, what the Taoists choose to do, their form of exiting the matrix, is they do all of these energetic works. This is what Qigong is about in Neigong, internal meditation. They do all this stuff to change the vibration in the cells of their body so that they can then transcend limited three-dimensional reality and go to however many dimensions they end up in. And that's called becoming an immortal. And so they believe that they're gods now, that they live on the plane of the gods. You can become a god. Who wouldn't want that? You can't do that if you assume that you live in hell, that you live in this place where either a fool or an antithesis or Jehovah who hates you because you're sinful. You can't do that if you ingest that assumption. So right off the bat, Sadakata, even though he doesn't want to get into the real conversation of it, he wants me to say that, Gnosticism is actually a really positive thing, which it's not. No matter which sect you looked at, it's still a prison. And I despise that. So I go on to say, thanks for clarifying, but those differences don't change the underlying assumption that humans need to transcend their physical self. So unfortunately, your argument that Gnostics differ doesn't change anything. Gnosticism is the precursor for Christian shame and self-hatred. So now he's going to want to slip and dodge that one, and he says, it has its root in Platonic and Persian philosophy. It's older than Christianity. Great, let's talk about that. Gnosticism is a belief of empires. What happens when you're in an empire? The Greeks, this is really important. You've got to understand where you came from. You've got to understand how your society came to the beliefs that it came to. When I went to school, and it's probably the same now, when you went to school and you learned history, the first thing you did is you learned about the Sumerians. And then you learned about whoever came after that. And then you learned about the Greeks. And then you learned about the Romans. And then you started learning about medieval Christian Europe. So what you're being told, even though nobody's saying this, what you're being told is that your ancestors were Sumerians. And that your worth is only connected to your connection to the historical progression of empires. When I was a kid in college and in high school, it's probably the same now, you didn't go learn history, you learned Western civilization. That's different. Civilization. Now, I've got nothing against a lot of things that civilization brings, so don't get me wrong, but what happens when you go from becoming a civilization? You become an empire. If you talk about any of them, the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, we could talk about all of the amazing things that came with infrastructure and civilization. But in order to get that, where it starts from is you start with somebody that was once hunter-gatherer people who then decided to become warriors. And they decided to get all of the stuff. It first starts with people learning how to farm and how to animal husbandry, how to have herds of cattle and how to farm. And then all of a sudden you've got to protect your herds and you got to protect all your grain. Because your grain starts piling up in silos, and all of the hunter-gatherers want that free grain, and they start raiding you. So now you have to build fences and walls and cities, and then you have to have armies. In order to be able to have armies, you got to go conquer other people and then have them do all of your work for you. And then the elite become the armies. That's why in Greece, the guys who went off and fought were all elites. And then they took over whoever they took over, and those guys did all the hard work. Then they sit up in their cities, and then they start talking about philosophy, and then they start talking about transcending this, blah, 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 blah. They're no longer talking about the God of earth and the God of sky and human beings being the divine mind, which is what the word man means. The Germanic mindset is, if you go before Christianity, it was actually a tribal, no different than any other primitive spiritual shamanic people. Human beings were the divine mind incarnated. Once you get into an empire, you have to start controlling people. So instead of having, multiple gods, now you start having, fewer and fewer gods. They start looking more like human beings. So you start putting, you start making temples that have idols that look like humans, right? And so then all of a sudden you end up with the one God. So Gnosticism came out of what happens to all of the people. You have the elites, the top 2% that live in their castles, and then you have everybody else that's doing all the hard work. And if they don't do the hard work, they're slaves, there's indentured servants, or whatever they are. If they don't do that, they're going to get killed. They start to feel oppressed. They start to feel like they're victims. And their spirituality starts to reflect their daily experience. And so they create this demiurge. They create archons that keep you trapped. That is a projection onto the spiritual world of your personal emotional state of being. That's why I'm trying to ask this guy, why do you believe this? Tell me why you want to believe this. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to talk this and that and where it came from. It doesn't mean anything. It all came from a society of empires that has the majority of people living in garbage and feeling like crap and feeling trapped. And so their spirituality is about escaping. Right? So let's see, he goes on to say, I think it's more complex than some psychological issues like self-hatred. I disagree with you. He's not telling me his feelings about it. So it's very hard for me to help him. He's got an agenda. He doesn't like what I'm saying because it challenges his emotional attachment to his beliefs. And that's the conversation I want to have with him. See what else. See, did he continue? I don't see here. I don't see that he did. Now he wants to turn it on me. And this is a very, people want to do this. So I smell the trap coming. He wants to say, what do you think about the demiurge? First off, that assumes that I accept the assumption that there is a demiurge, which I don't. So I'm not going to take the bait. So I turn around and I say, you first. What do you think the demiurge is? Now I want to hear what he has to say. Now I'm going to start to find out what his emotional attachment is. Even though he may not think he's giving that to me, this is what he's going to end up telling me. And he says, in short, the astral light. Now, as beautiful as that sounds, the astral light, doesn't that sound wonderful? I like the sound of that. In fact, I do a lot of energy work where I connect to stars and I pull the power of the stars into my body and into different organs. I do all that. I love that idea. Difference is that his astral light created him. So when he's putting on a cute face onto the demiurge, which turns it into astral light, it doesn't change the fact that the difference between my experience and his experience is that his is outside of him, whereas in my experience, everything outside of me is me. And I'm pulling into my physical body all of my infinite, celestial light and power, so that my physical body will match the eternal outside of me, and then I get to come back to my original essence, which is Almighty God. So is you. So are you. You can never do that with Gnosticism. You will never be able to escape the need to transcend, which means escape. It's what transcend means. It means to go past, to push beyond. You're everything. How can you transcend yourself? That's the difference. That's why I don't buy into it. He and I don't want to have that discussion, so I go on to say, okay, that's too vague. Try again. What does the demiurge do? And let's see if he says anything. It's an intelligent field that is in charge of the evolutionary manifestation, or any other manifestation for that matter. In other words, the ether. Except that it's outside of you. It's not you. It's a part of you, apart from you, and it controls you. According to you, it's in charge of the evolutionary manifestation. You're in charge, in my opinion. You can be a victim if you want, but that's my opinion. And my practices prove it to me. This is why this channel is about the practices, 90-day challenge. All the talk is meaningless. You have to do the work. Your body is an energy capacitor. The cells of your body, the organs of your body, your spinal column. We're just talking about the physical things. We're not even talking about the non-physical meridians in your body, the non-physical energies, the 3 ones. We're not even talking about those yet. Your body is an energy capacitor that if you choose to use it, you can transform yourself into something you can't even begin to imagine. And all that means is that you'll return to your original self. All this talk about, what exists out there, this is, again, we're in the realm of Christianity, because what is Christianity based on? Your belief. You have to first intellectually believe it before you'll be accepted. In fact, God will throw you into hell for no other reason than not choosing to believe. I'm saying spirituality is a direct connection. If I can't experience it with my physical body, if I can't experience these things, they don't exist to me. The reason why I talk about the 3 selves, the reason why I talk about all of this stuff is because I have techniques that I use that tap me directly into it. Talking about the demiurge and all that means nothing to me because it's all talk. 90-day challenge. All right, let's see. So now let's go. Now I'll go and take a look at the questions here. I'm done with that argument. I think I made my point. Raymond Avich, question. At least what this Aruda Lugna means I wanted to ask. So Raymond, I don't know if English is your first language. I don't know what you're saying. It sounds like you're asking me, what does the Aruda Lugna mean? That's for another discussion, but the Aruda Lugna is a Vedic astrological concept that, again, I've proven in my life. That's why I believe in it. And in your Vedic chart, which is your East Indian astrological chart, you can find out what it is that people see you as opposed to how you feel about yourself. And if you act in accordance with how people see you as opposed to how you feel, you'll be successful, you'll make money, and people will like you. That's in short. And if people get readings from me, you can go to courses.thunderwizard.com to find out how to get a astrology reading. By the way, these links are here for a reason. Please stop asking me questions like, how do I get this? And go click on the links. That's why they're there. Courses.thunderwizard.com, you'll find how to get an astrology reading from me or from one of my apprentices, and you'll find out what your Aruda is. And it's as simple as showing up, dressing, and acting like your Aruda, even if you feel like it or don't feel like it. And then you'll find yourself having a lot more success in your life. That's the short of it. What else now? All right, I'm looking for the questions again. This was a different thing, so there's a lot of talking back and forth, including myself, so I won't yell at anybody for that. Do I see a question? I don't see a question. Not yet. Let's keep looking. Travis Cup, I don't know what you're talking about, and that doesn't sound like a question to me either. Let's see what else. T. Dan, question. Could you elaborate on the Khalsar Yoga that you guys talked about? Sounds very similar to my Vedic chart. Saturn is the only planet outside of Rahu and Ketu. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is. I mean, you can look it up. You know, you can just type in Khalsar Yoga, which is Kaalsarp Yoga. Just type it in and it'll come up. It's a controversial belief that says that if you've got planets hemmed in, because in everybody's chart, you've got Rahu and Ketu, which are the karmic nodes. Rahu is why you chose to incarnate. Ketu is what will take you out of incarnation. So that has a strong association with karma and destiny and dharma and, you know, orlog and all that kind of stuff. And so the belief is that, and to be honest, I can't remember which side. I think it's on the, you know, if you're looking at a Vedic chart, if it's on the bottom side, I think, I could be wrong about that. In fact, forget I just said that. I don't know what I'm saying. On one side of the chart, if you have all the planets in between Rahu and Ketu, that is what's called Khalsar Yoga, which means that Ketu, the snake, is encircling you. So first off, don't get wrapped up by it because it's a controversial belief to begin with. And pretty much everybody has some kind of Khalsar Yoga. I mean, you can't not. But what I was pointing out is that if you look at the, let's bring it up here. I don't think I have one for the planets, but let's bring up the rune wheel here and pretend that we're talking about the 9 planets. So let me find the rune wheel. Is that it? No. Rune wheel. So let's bring up the rune wheel here. All right, so forgive my face here. So it's facing north. So the top is north, the bottom is south. So if you go to the northeast, that is the default position in terms of direction now. We're not looking at a chart, we're just looking at directions. So the northeast is the direction for Ketu, which represents being taken out of this world. That's why, one of the reasons why you want to put an altar in the northeast, because the northeast represents the highest ether. So by putting an altar there and facing northeast and praying to the gods there, then you are aligning yourself with your true liberation, your true moksha. And then opposite that in the southwest, that is the realm of the underworld, the realm of the unconscious mind, all of your, you know, your garbage, your past life garbage, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to sneeze, hang on. Excuse me. In the southwest, there is where Rahu exists. Now, Rahu represents all of the unresolved karma and desires that you had in past lives you didn't experience, which bring you back into manifestation, why you choose to come back. So both of these planets, Rahu and Ketu, are seen as being malefics, which means that they're seen as malefics, which means that they can cause you all kinds of pain and misery. So Rahu represents all of your obsessions, all of the desires that cannot be met. The extremes of Rahu are drug addiction, alcoholism, pornography, the sex trade, thieves, you know, anything having to do with you need, you know, things that never can be satisfied. You know, like that's one of the bummers about sex. It's never enough. You know, you may have the best sex of your life today, but then you'll wake up tomorrow and you're like, I need it again. Drugs are like that. Alcohol is like that. Fame is like that. You know, wanting to be loved and accepted. Those kinds of things. Those are Rahu. Ketu is destructive because he destroys whatever is around him, because he says, listen, all this is an illusion. Let's get to the real thing. So if you want to have a physical life, if you want to have money and a family and all that stuff, then Ketu, if he's near any of that, he'll destroy it. So it's painful for you. So the idea is that those two realms, the northeast and the southwest, what these guys were bringing to my attention was that creates a loop. Because energy, if we're looking again at the rune wheel, energy manifests in a clockwise direction. And so energy comes in at the north as pure potential, and then it goes through the stages. It then turns into celestial light, and then it turns into the ego in the east, and then it turns into the mind in the southeast, and then it turns into the physical body in the south, and then it turns into the decay in the southwest starts to begin, and then in the west, if you get that far, then you turn into a wise old person, and then in the northwest, your last moments on this earth, and then you return back to the infinite again. So the northeast to the southwest can be a loop where the ego never leaves. It gets trapped. And so I was making the observation to those guys that what they were talking about, this northeast to the southwest being an ego trap, I was saying that sounds like Khalsar Yoga. All right, so you can do more research on that if you want. I'm already confused. So Small Legion, you're new to my channel. Welcome. The best way to get my attention is to write the word question. And then write an honest question and write it in a way that I can read it. And I'll be happy to answer it. So he says, aren't demons supposed to be at least partially composed of fallen angels? Only in the Abrahamic tradition. Our ancestors didn't believe in angels. Angels don't have any will of their own. Angels are these like robots, according to the Abrahamic tradition, which if you don't know what that means, that's the Old Testament and the New Testament. Abraham, so Abrahamic. They believe that God, Jehovah, created these robots called angels that have no will of their own. So demons in that tradition are fallen angels. Demons do exist. I've experienced them. I've done exorcisms, and I practice a form of spirituality that fights against negativity, including negative entities. But demons, from my experience, are not fallen angels. They are emotions. You can create a demon. If you spend your life in rage, in resentment, in fear, when you die, those emotions get squished out onto the physical plane, and they may act like a ghost, or they could turn into a demon. Whatever they are emotional beings that feed off of negative emotions. It has nothing to do with fallen angels unless you choose to believe that, which I don't. Our ancestors didn't believe in any of that stuff. Let's see what else. Demons are archetypes of our psyche. That's another explanation that I would accept. Let's see what else. Glitch Baby question. So if we created everything, does that mean I created you? Yep. That's what that means. And you created me? Yep. That's what that means. So let me share with you, I know that might be hard to get your head around. It's not easy for me to get my head around it. How can both of those things be true? But let me share a story from a Hawaiian shaman. Guy's still around. His name is Hugh Lin. Haleakala Hugh Lin. He's a Hawaiian. I think he's of Asian descent, but he's a native Hawaiian. And he trained with a Hawaiian shaman, which are called hunas or kahunas or whatever. And he is also a psychologist, I believe. Anyway, there was a Hawaiian mental asylum. I think I've got my stories right now. A Hawaiian mental asylum. And they had really bad, nasty, insane people there. Like the kind of people, that if you walked by, if they could, they'd bite your ear off, throw feces at you. They had to like chain people to the wall, and they didn't want to do that, but they had to so that they wouldn't hurt themselves or hurt others, or it was awful, and they didn't know what to do. And so they had heard about this psychologist who had really amazing results with people, and so they talked to him and said, hey, can you come in and help us? And he decided, you find out later that he checks with himself, And if his spirit tells him it's something he's supposed to do, he does it. So apparently he passed that test, and he went and said, yeah, I'll come help you. And he showed up, and they sat him down, and they told him about how horrible things were with these, certain individuals, and what could he do. And they said, will you help? And he says, yeah, I'll help. He says, oh, great. When can you start meeting with them? He says, oh, I'm not going to meet with them. I just want their charts. And they said, what are you going to do with that? He says, don't worry about it. This is what I do. This is how I'm going to do it. I don't want to meet with them. I just want to look at their charts. And then just leave me alone with their charts and let me do my work. And they said, okay, what could they do? So they gave him the charts of all of these, insane people. And what he would do is he'd leaf through the charts. And whenever he would read something that he had an emotional reaction to, like, a patient A bit the ear off of an attendant, and if he had an emotional reaction to that, then he would stop and he would apply what he called changing the data in his lower self. His belief is that everything in the universe that he experiences is a projection of his lower self. Lower self doesn't mean lower like bad. It just means, your navel center. And within your navel center, you have what he calls bad data. I would call that unconsciousness, unresolved emotional, psychological issues, past life karma, beliefs about yourself. Like Gnosticism is popular with people who have data in their lower self that says that they're victims and pieces of crap. But they've kind of painted it with some lipstick and put some perfume on it, and they think now they've got this, beautiful religion. And Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Oh, see, Jesus believes that. Well, but you've got all this other garbage tied around it, which makes it smell bad. So his whole thing was, if you change the data in your lower self, if you change what I call your unconscious attachments and your conditions, then your external universe will change to reflect that. In other words, he creates everything. Everything is his own creation. So he's looking at this, and he reads patient A bit off the ear, and he had a reaction to it. And then he says this mantra, or this affirmation. He says, to, not to the person, but to that person inside of him. So once he sees that, he recognizes that that evil, crazy person is part of him, that's inside of him. And he addresses this mantra to that part inside of him, and he says, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. So he's saying that his negative reaction to somebody else is actually a negative reaction to himself, which perpetuates it. So first he says, I love you. Then he says, I'm sorry. What he means by that is he says, I'm sorry that I projected my negativity onto you. You're a perfect being, and I'm projecting that you're this screwed up, insane person that bites off people's ears. I'm sorry that I did that. Please forgive me. Thank you. Right? So he does that over and over again until he can read and look at that and not have an emotional reaction. And then he moves on to the next. And whenever he has an emotional reaction, he goes through that whole process. And he would say, again, it's not about the other people. It's about inside of him. He's changing the data. It's like the film strip. If your projection of your world is a film strip, right? He's going in and he's changing the film strip. He's redrawing it to look like something else, and then it gets projected on and things change. Now, according to the story, he didn't meet with any of the patients, and they all of a sudden started getting better. Now, he'll go on to say, listen, it's not my job to do that with everybody. He says, I only do that with things that I have a karmic connection to. So when they came to him and said, would you like to do this? He checked with himself, and his insight said, yes. This is about cleaning yourself. So he says, everything that I do is about cleaning me, cleaning my insides, because I want to be connected to the universe. I want to achieve liberation, escape the matrix, whatever word you want to use. So you created me and I created you. So every time that you guys think something negative of me, then, and you don't like the way that I do my videos or the things that I believe, you can go and work on that in yourself. And if you have a karmic attachment, and we have a karmic debt, then you may be responsible for me becoming a better teacher. And vice versa. If I have a problem with you and you've done something that really bothers me and irks me, and if it really messes with my life, I can check with myself and go, yep, I've got a karmic debt to that person. Then I would have to change that within me, and then your life would get better. That's the idea. Satakata says, Michael, you're misunderstanding. I was speaking solely about what Gnostics said. I never sided with Gnosticism. Well, take a side. Why are you wasting both of our times by needing to correct me? Pick a side. There's obviously some connection, or you wouldn't have put the effort into it. So I don't believe you 100%. Just because you haven't said you haven't sided with it, I am not of the belief that you don't have an emotional attachment to it. Because otherwise you wouldn't be so interested in needing to correct me about it. I'm not saying I'm right or I'm wrong. I'm talking about your need to engage with me on that level. I mean, look at all of the ways that you had me, you spun me around in all these different ways, and you could have told me that in the first sentence. So what the fuck is going on? Why do you need, what do you like about it? And what do you not like about what I say? And don't say it doesn't matter to you, because we're all emotional beings. We're all, Gnosticism is a really intellectualized religion, which is a way of escaping. Okay, let's keep going. What else? All right, so Satakata's got a bug up his ass and he wants to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about because you weren't clear. This is about you not being clear about what you believe, why you believe it, and what you really want from me. If you're on my channel, I'm telling you this is why you're here. This is true for everybody. You're not going to, maybe some of you aren't going to like it. If you're on my channel, you're here because you want me to help you become clear of what is going on in your unconscious. And many people walk around, think they're believing one thing, when in their unconscious, they're believing something else altogether differently. You're wanting to get aligned with yourself. You're wanting to become conscious of things that are preventing you from having the life that you want, that are preventing you from connecting to your authentic self. It's the whole reason I'm here. So why are you dancing with me? What is it that you want? Stop bullshitting. Stop. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit about what I don't understand about what you're saying? Who gives a shit? How does that help you? How does you arguing with me about what you really meant about Gnosticism and that you're not, how does that help you achieve anything in your spiritual progress? I'm not attached to my beliefs. I don't give a crap. If somebody can show me a Gnostic philosopher that agrees with me 100%, I'll be the first one to go, oh, here's a Gnostic I like. I don't have an issue about this. All right. I don't see any more questions here. So, you know how this works. If you don't ask questions, then I either got to entertain you or sell something to you, unless there's nobody on here. It says there's 33. Let me see how many people are still watching, because that'll determine if I do anything here. So let me refresh my page and see how many people we've got watching. I could just be talking to myself here. Yes, we've got at least 21 people on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some time to think about any questions you have about anything. And if you have some questions, I'll answer them. Otherwise, if not, we'll call it a day. It's been a long video for everybody. And let's just talk about why you need to, subscribe to my channel. Where'd it go? Hey there, this is Arnold. I have a very important announcement. I command you to listen to me. This is Arnold Swears He's Bigger, and I'm here to tell you something very important. you must go to thunderwizard.com YouTube channel, subscribe and hit the bell button. I command you to do this. It's the most important thing you're ever going to do in your life. If you don't listen to me now and hear me later and go and subscribe, I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to shame you in front of your whole family. I'm going to go to your school and I'm going to chastise you in front of your friends. I'm going to go to your church. I'm going to stand in front of the whole congregation and I'm going to tell people how stupid you are for not going and subscribing to this channel. I tell you now, it's the most important thing you're ever going to do. You have to go and subscribe right now, otherwise my head is going to explode. Do it now, I command you. Okay, we're back. All right, I don't see any questions here. Again, satakata. You know, one of the things you don't want to do with me is keep doubling down. He says to me, you seem to not be familiar with the ether as in Tesla works. Am I supposed to be familiar with that? So why does that mean anything? How do you practice with absent healing? It's through the intelligent field. You're shoving assumptions down my throat. This is nothing that I teach. What are you trying to defend here? Stop trying to defend yourself. What are you gaining with this? It's what connects you. You know, this is, again, if you want to get anywhere in life, forget about with me. Be able to talk about you. Talking about things in the third person as though, number one, I need to swallow your assumptions. Number two, that I teach any of this. When have I ever mentioned Tesla at all? And now, what is the value judgment that I don't believe or understand how Tesla works? Is that, should I now go and start researching Tesla so that you'll approve of me? Who gives a shit? What do you want? What do you do? Stop telling me about what you think and what you know and what you know and what I don't know and why I don't understand you. Get the fuck out of your head. Come from here. Everything is here. Your emotions are the pathway to know what you believe and why you believe it. We are emotional beings. What is your emotional attachment? What is the payoff for anything? If you can get there and get honest with yourself, then all of this intellectual talk and who believes what and why is meaningless. And you can get to the core of what works for you. I don't give a shit. If that works for you, then go put that on your channel. Why the belief in Teslas? Go make your own videos about why that works. And you'll benefit people. Small Legion question. You mentioned a meridian. Do you have a vid on what that means? I feel like I've heard it before. Small Legion, you can just look it up. You can look up, here I'll make it easy for you. You can look up TCM meridians. Just go Google that. Traditional Chinese medicine meridians. Otherwise, I'd be here for hours. Go look it up and you'll know what I'm talking about. Those are, yeah. If you can understand meridians and you can understand energy practices and what meridians they work with, it will tell you a lot about what you can accomplish. I'm going to be talking about that more in the 90-day challenge. In the second, we've got the first installment of the morning, afternoon, and evening practices. In the second installment, I'm going to start talking about how to stimulate different meridians using different mudras, things like that. Again, practical stuff. I challenge everybody to do the 90-day challenge, even for 30 days, and see if it doesn't practically change your reality. Forget about beliefs. Okay? All right, that's it. I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to call it an afternoon. I've done all my all my business. All right, I'll see you guys soon. See you guys later.